this trafficker leans forward and he goes, Pablo, he says, I have a gift for you. And I said, really, what's your gift? And he hands me his phone. There's a picture of an 11-year-old girl on his phone. He said, she's my gift for you for this party. That was the hardest moment for me.
Paul Hutchinson was once the co-founder of Bridge Investment Group, a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm, a man of wealth and influence. He called himself a compassionate capitalist. But Paul's story took a radical turn. Trading boardroom deals for rescue operations, he became an undercover operative fighting child trafficking.
The truth is that true happiness comes when you're making a powerful, positive impact in the lives of other people.
He has personally funded and participated in more than 70 missions across 15 countries. Missions that risked his life, missions that gave thousands of children theirs back. He's the executive producer and primary investor behind the film Sound of Freedom and recipient of the Medal of Freedom Award for his global work.
He said, we have to do a simultaneous sting. Somehow we've got to figure out how to rescue more than 100 children on one day, but I need your help. He said, if you're willing to be the bait, I'll change your whole life. And so 2 days later, I'm face to face with the most evil people on the planet that are selling children. My whole life making money, making rich people richer. I want to make a difference.
The more you know, the more the unknown grows. I am Jitesh Vaswani, your host, and together, let's take this journey beyond the known.
Paul, thank you for coming on to our show.
I'm incredibly grateful to be here and excited to share together with you and your audience.
Let's start at the very beginning, right? What was Paul like when he was in the corporate world? Who is Paul Hutchinson then?
I find myself very blessed in that arena. I had a very successful start in my early 20s, build a company that helped people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. We had a cognitive restructuring program that helped change the negative habit patterns of thought that kind of led into a lot of these things. And I had 50,000 people a month calling in off of an infomercial to get help with a lot of these problems. And I sold that company for $20 million when I was 29 years old and started investing in real estate. Realized if I didn't hire guys smarter than me, I was going to lose all my money in real estate. So I put together an amazing team. And that company grew and grew and grew into eventually over 4,000 employees and tens of billions of dollars of assets under management in that firm.
Wow. And how does that differ from Paul Hutchinson today?
Well, you want to be real? I'll be really honest with you.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I wasn't Paul Hutchinson. I was Paul effing Hutchinson. I had built a multi-billion-dollar company. I was at one point I had 2 helicopters, 50 plus vehicles. I had a house with 10 bathrooms and 8 private suites, 7 fireplaces. I lived in this house as a bachelor, single at one point, right? I had 3 kitchens, 7 fireplaces. I had a basketball court in my basement. And now there's nothing wrong with pursuing excellence in your business life. There's nothing wrong with having a vision board with supercars and a beautiful house and all these things. There's nothing wrong with that. I tell people that I used things to motivate myself to do the right thing long enough for me to realize the right reason to be doing it. And the right reason wasn't things. It was making a difference. And I got to that point. Wow, I've made all this money. I'm doing all these things. I'm the guy that if a senator or a congressman or a NBA player wasn't invited to my party, their assistant called me and wondered what they did wrong. You know, I was in that energy space, but I thought the happiness was going to come from one more party, one more car, one more girl, one more crap. And the truth is that true happiness comes when you're making a powerful, positive impact in the lives of other people.
And how old were you when this realization came to you?
Let's see. I'm 54 now. I was a little over 40 years old. I was about 45 years old at the time. Pinnacle of success in so many ways. Now, I will say this. I wasn't a bad person.
Right.
In my early 20s, I had a mentor that said, Paul, if you want to be infinitely more successful in all of your business ventures, choose to be charitable. And I remember I told him, I says, well, that's why I want to be rich, so I can, give money away and help people. He said, no, he said, do it now. Now, this is back when I was earning $2,000 a month, right? And I'm like, oh,
Right.
wait a minute, how much should I give away? And he said, the average person only donates 2% of their annual income to making a difference to charity. He said, you should make that number at least 10%, if not 10, 15 or 20%. He said, some of the wealthiest people in the world, billionaire families, have a rule that at least 10 to 20% of everything they bring in is going back into making the world a better place. And so, I made that decision in my early 20s. I donated time on countless different charity organizations. I decided that I would focus my attention with children. I remember pulled over on the side of the road. Some guy was asking for, had a sign, we'll work for food, whatever. And I pulled out a 20, I gave it to him. And I remember a friend told me, he said, Paul, do you really think you're making a difference? Are you contributing to the problem with, was it did he get there because of a bunch of bad decisions that he made, over his lifetime? And now you're just contributing to his, bad decisions. And I remember saying, you know what, I don't know. And I can't judge. I don't know if that couldn't have been me if I didn't live in a healthy home growing up, etc. But over time, I came to realize that, yes, indeed, a lot of times I was contributing to the very problem I was wanting to help. And so I chose to focus my attention on what I consider the truly innocent, a 9-year-old child in a position completely outside of any decisions that she made. So I donated time on, the Ronald McDonald House. I was on the Make-A-Wish board of directors for 7 years. And in fact, I was the incoming chairman in our area for Make-A-Wish when I received a phone call from our attorney general. And he said, Paul, I know that you've donated a lot of time and money to child-related charities. He said, I need to talk to you about something that's pretty dark. And he starts talking about, he says, it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, and good people don't know that it's happening. He started talking about human trafficking. And then he said, there's a team of former government agents that are in Colombia who have identified about 20 children that they need some financial help to help rescue them. And so, for me at the time, $10,000 with Make-A-Wish, I could send a little girl to Disneyland with, which is important. She's struggling with cancer. It's a dream come true. It was very effective. For this, $50,000, we could pull 20 kids out of hell and get them back to their families. And so, I decided to make that happen. And that was the first step into what completely transformed my life.
How did that phone call translate into you becoming like an undercover agent? Like, walk us through the steps. Like, how does that happen?
I had some training from a previous life that made me somewhat safe in a dangerous place. And the attorney general knew that and passed that information on to one of the former Homeland Security agents that was down there. So after I helped to fund that mission, a few weeks later, I got a call from one of the operators that was on the ground in Cartagena, Colombia. And he said, Paul, we're down here in Cartagena. There's not just 20 kids. There's more than 50 here. There's more than 100 children in other cities in Colombia that we've identified. He said, if we do one sting, the other ones might catch the word that we're after them, and then boom, everybody goes into hiding. He said, we have to do a simultaneous sting. Somehow we've got to figure out how to rescue more than 100 children on one day, but I need your help. And I said, well, how much do you need? He goes, well, it's going to be over $250,000. He said, however, I need you. I said, you need me? He said, yeah. He said, I have to have somebody who can effectively negotiate a multi-million-dollar real estate transaction with the traffickers. He said that the head trafficker has a piece of property he wants to develop into a child resort, a place he can sell his victims to wealthy Americans. He needed a few $1 million to build it out. He believed he could make tens of millions of dollars a year on this, Jeffrey Epstein Island type of a thing that he was doing. And so the plan was, I would come down. He said, I don't know of anybody who can negotiate. He said, I can't teach my Navy SEALs how to negotiate a multi-million-dollar real estate deal. He says, these guys will see through the fake all day long. He said, I don't know of anybody in your position that's had the training that you've had. He said, if you're willing to be the bait, I'll change your whole life. And so He said, "Can you be in Colombia in 2 days?" And I'm like, yeah. I said, it was funny. I was at a conference. It was a
Yeah.
third generation multi-billionaire conference in which I was there pitching our real estate fund, right? And so we had just finished with this opulent dinner. We're at this gorgeous hotel when I got this phone call, and I said, "Well,
Right.
you need me there in 2 days. I don't have time to fly home and get my change clothes." I said, "What should I wear?" He goes, "Just come as a wealthy playboy." And I looked down. I've got a suit that cost more than my first car. Right? It was dark conservative blue on the outside, and inside was like hot pink. I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." I said, and I had $2,000 cufflinks on, a $50,000 watch. I'm like, you know what? I think I have the outfit. Right?
Yeah.
So 2 days later, I'm face to face with the most evil people on the planet that are selling children.
When you are negotiating with a person like that, right? When you are staring at a person who you know internally is probably one of the most evil person or like a predator, how do you mentally prepare yourself for something like this?
You know, it's interesting. I didn't know what to expect. I had never met what I thought. I thought, maybe traffickers or, earrings in their noses and tattoos down their necks. And the first trafficker I met was a businessman. He was well-spoken, clean-shaven, polo shirt. The next I met was a beautiful woman. She ran from Miss Cartagena. In the movie Sound of Freedom, we highlight her a little bit, but she was working with a modeling agency, and I thought, these guys aren't traffickers. They look like normal people. But sure enough, we sit down and start having a conversation about their plan, and it got dark. Halfway through the meeting, this trafficker leans forward and he goes, "Pablo," he says, I have a gift for you." And I said, "Really? What's your gift?" And he hands me his phone, and there's a picture of an 11-year-old girl on his phone. He said, "This is Princess. She's 11. She's a 0-kilometer-mile model that we have." You can figure out what that means, And this is the first time that he said, "She's my gift for you for this party." He says, "We just took delivery of so." I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "I realized if we could get these kids out before they're ever hurt the first time, that's a miracle." And something he said made me realize he had more than her. I said, "Fuego," I said, you have more of those virgins?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, I have 3 or 4 more." I said, "You have to bring those to my party. Or, you're going to bring those too, right?" Because what the plan was, I said, "Listen, I'll fund your project." We needed to get him to call all the other traffickers and get them to bring all the kids to the same place at the same time. So that we could do the sting and rescue them all. So what the plan was, is I said, "Listen, I'll fund your project under one condition. We're going to have a party in a couple of weeks. I'm going to bring a bunch of my friends who are into this kind of thing, and you show up with all of your existing inventory. All of it. And anybody else in this area, you call them, you bring them all together. And if I'm happy with what I see, then I'll fund your project." So I told him, I says, "You're going to now in the movie Sound of Freedom, my character was played by the producer of Sound of Freedom, Eduardo Verástegui. He's the wealthy multi-billion-dollar fund manager who quits his job to go help the kids. And when Jim Caviezel says to him, "Hey, can you come down to Colombia?" He goes, "Oh no, I'm not going to do it unless the government, has authorization with the U.S." And it wasn't until he gave this picture of this little girl to my driver that I see that girl, the first time seeing a child that I knew was trafficked, that it changed my opinion. In real life, I was already there. I was face to face with these guys, but him showing me that picture galvanized my commitment to help eradicate this evil in whatever way I could. And so I said, "You're going to bring," I said, you have more like her?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I got 3 or 4 more." I said, "You're going to bring those too to the party?" He goes, "Oh no." He says, "They're too expensive." I'm like, "Too expensive? I'm already paying this asshole $25,000. I'm paying him $500 per child for a minimum of 50 children just for 2 hours in the afternoon, right?" He goes, "Jefe, you already paid $25,000. You want to F those other versions? It's going to cost you maybe $2,000, maybe $5,000 for that little one. It's going to cost you maybe $10,000 more." Now, at this point, I am legitimately pissed. There's no acting involved. My ego self got I literally, I had the lifestyle where I was blowing that kind of money on a party any day of the week, right? So I put my hands on my chest and I'm like, "You don't think I can afford an extra $10,000? He's like, oh, no, Jefe, no. I said, I want every one of those 0 kilometer miles, as you call them. I want every one of them at the party. I said, they damn well better be virgins when they get there. If you touch them, this entire deal's off. You understand? They're for me, not for you. You understand? He goes, oh, yeah, Jefe, I understand. Stupid smile on his face. So now the Navy SEAL that was standing behind me, he was my real bodyguard and he was my show bodyguard. He during the time the guy showed me the picture, he clears his throat and he goes, I need to walk around the restaurant, make sure everything is, safe and whatever. He was and later when we were debriefing, he said, you know what? He said, that little girl looked like my daughter at home. He said, I almost unholstered my weapon and shot him right there. He said, I couldn't handle just sitting there. He says, but I realized if we did that, we would have lost all the other kids. And so, that was the first meeting there. But the hardest part of that first operation was on the sting itself, where we're sitting there at a table. These guys had brought 54 children. So the movie is accurate on the number of kids that came. The little girl that he showed me on the picture, in the movie, we said that she wasn't there. In real life, she was. We put like 8 different rescue missions together to form one storyline with the Sound of Freedom movie. But I'm sitting there on this chair. This trafficker had gone in the house where the kids were. He goes, out to show you the gifts that I brought you. This was really difficult. I'm sitting on a chair just like you and I are right now.
Yeah.
And they bring out these kids, and these kids aren't any taller standing up than I am sitting down. And there was 3 little girls, 1 little boy. They gave this little boy cocaine that morning because he was scared. And what kind of monster thinks that that's attractive? Every cell in my body wanted to hug these kids and say, you're going to be fine. You're going to see your parents again. I couldn't say that. I this little girl, the one that he showed me in the picture, she now was standing in front of me in real life. And there was makeup. Her makeup had been smeared because she had been crying. She was so scared of meeting the men who were going to hurt her. And imagine this. She's got these long red braids. She has a shirt that has a little kitty cat face on it. She's 11. She's dressed like an 11-year-old. She acts like an 11-year-old. And she is scared to death. And I took her hands and I said, "Como te llamas? What's your name?" And she didn't answer. I'm sure it's because her real name wasn't Princess, right? She's trying to figure out what to say. And I just said 2 words. I said, "Está bien." It's okay. I told the traffickers, I said, "Bro, man, we can't start this party yet. We have to finish negotiating this business plan with you. You bring these guys out and you bring the cocaine out, we're gonna have a great time, but you've just proven to me that you could do what you said you would do. You brought 54 kids. Let's work on this business plan first." And we sent the kids back in. That was the hardest moment for me, is looking eye to eye with children that were in that position. I thought, what is this? Where is humanity where this is okay anywhere? And the most beautiful moment for me was after the agents came and stormed the party and arrested everybody, and the Child Protective Services people came in with the children, and they were calming the kids down because, it was an upsetting situation. It's like, they've been through it so many times. They're calming them down, and they started laughing. They started singing with the children. And that singing, that sound of freedom, was the most beautiful sound that I ever heard. I started crying, turned the operator that was with me. I said, "Bro, I've spent my whole life making money, making rich people richer. I want to make a difference. What can I do? How can I help?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Paul, there's a lot of demand for stuff like this that comes from guys with big checkbooks and big egos, and they kind of look and talk and dress like you." He said, if you want to be on board with this team, he said, we'll put you into that role. And I did. I led or played a key part in over 70 undercover child rescue missions over a period of the next 10 years in 15 countries. And it has been by far the most rewarding thing.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. I'm at a loss of words. Um, I didn't. I mean, as you were describing this story, like I was getting emotional, and I can't imagine when you were there in person, like the kind of I I mean I don't know what you would have gone through, and that would be nothing as compared to what probably those kids go through, right? It's crazy.
It was difficult because it was my first time seeing that.
Yeah.
But there were others that were by far more dangerous and others that ripped my heart right out of my body. I had one in Dominican Republic. The trafficker was an escaped convict from the US. And he brought a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old and said, listen, these girls are special. They are not just for one-time use. He said, do you have the ability to just buy them and take them away from the DR? And I made up a story. I said, yeah, we could take them to a friend of mine owns a brothel in Miami, we're underage kids. He goes, great. He said, now I need to get you on the phone to negotiate it. And he hands me his phone, and the mother of these two girls was on the phone negotiating a deal where she was selling her children for good.
What kind of I see what kind of a mother would do that, and then also what kind of circumstances would there be, like,
See, and I
how is
think
this happening? You know what I'm saying?
This is really the answer to the riddle. So after 10 years of heartbreaking experiences, seeing mothers sell their children, seeing fathers that thought that their 10-year-old could make more money selling her body and could provide for the family, seeing children that were ripped away from healthy homes that were put back. I mean, over and over, all these horrific situations, I found myself wishing every operation that I could go back in time, that I could help that child before they were ever traumatized at that level. What if I could go back before anybody ever hurt them? Just like on that first mission, pulling these kids out before they're ever hurt the first time. What would that look like? And I thought, okay, we could, if I could go back, I wish. But then I thought, you know what? Even if we did that, if we pulled these kids out of hell then, if not enough was being done to fix the problem itself, the demand and the supply side, if not enough was being done there, then 20 more kids would be sucked back into the deepest recesses of hell to fill that demand. And I realized over time this one really important fact: hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
And healed people can heal the world. And this is really, this is so important. This very next part that I say here is so important that people don't think that I'm not a sympathizer in any way of anybody who hurts a child. I've literally put my life in danger hundreds of times to ensure that we preserve their innocence. However, I recognized over 10 years that almost every one of the traffickers were trafficked themselves as children. Almost every one of the perpetrators had unhealed wounds that they were carrying that now, granted, those unhealed wounds turned into a lot of bad decisions. Now, the majority of my undercover operators have experienced abuse in their own childhood. Just because you experience that abuse doesn't mean you're going to become an abuser. The majority of people grow up to be protectors, right? They make a conscious decision that I am not going to allow that pain to continue to hurt other people. However, the people who choose to hold it inside, the ones who don't disclose it, that it comes out in anxiety and depression and PTSD, and it comes out in addictions, and sometimes it then comes out in what I call trauma transfer, where that unhealed trauma, that unspoken trauma, because holding it in, it just marinates. It then comes out in the physical, verbal, and sexual abuse of somebody else.
Yeah.
So when we take a look at it from that standpoint, now we can start looking at what healing the world looks like.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up an important point. So maybe this is something that I don't know if you know about me or not, but I teach with the Art of Living Foundation. I teach breathing and meditation. And the founders of the Art of Living, his name is Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankar. And he's a peacemaker. And one of his missions involved was also in Colombia, because you mentioned Colombia. I want to say this, where he negotiated peace between the government and the FARC rebellion. So this was a 52-year-old civil war, and now he's sitting at the table with all these FARC guerrillas right around him, and he chooses to lead a meditation with these so-called terrorists, right? And then, a lot of them have never experienced peace before. A lot of them come from that cycle of violence, and that's why they were perpetrating violence, right? And like you said, hurt people. So he says something similar. He says, behind every culprit, there is a victim crying for help. And when we address the victim inside the culprit, then there's room for change and there's room for transformation. So you just reminded me of that powerful moment that I've heard of before, right? And there's a movie on that, but that's a separate topic.
That is the topic, though.
That is the topic, though.
I truly believe that where you're going with that is why not only do I have the Child Liberation Foundation, I have Liberating Humanity, because if every person could take time to tune in. I have a book called Are You Listening that I'm writing right now with my hand on my heart. Not Are You Listening with my hand on my ear, but Are You Listening here? Because, and I talk about how in the later years of the undercover missions, tuning in to that still small voice of truth and through an active meditation type of a technique that I was using, we were being led to where those children were and led to things that we need to do to keep our team safe. And we now have 5 and 7 day fully immersive transformational healing experiences in which we teach breath work, we teach different types of meditation tools, we use different types of plant medicines to help people completely release those things that don't serve them. And I believe that if every single hurt person were loved by somebody like you, like your mentor, like us, and given the ability to release those things that no longer serve them, we would save millions of children, not just hundreds of thousands like we have.
Hey, a quick pause. If you're listening to this and thinking, I need more peace in my day, more clarity in my mind, then I'll really encourage you to check out The Art of Living. The Art of Living offers a technique called Sky Breath Meditation, used by CEOs, pro athletes, and high performers around the world to recharge their energy, clear that mental fog, and reset the nervous system in minutes. They offer programs both online and in person. It is science-backed and it works. Head to artofliving.org to learn more. Let's talk what healing looks like, right? So your work right now with the Liberating Humanity Foundation, you offering breathwork and meditation, among other things. Do you offer it to people who you think could progress on that path, or is it open for all, or is it for victims?
I believe that healing for everyone is important for healing humanity. Nobody is in a position where they can't benefit from breath work and meditation. Right. And in fact, a quick story to illustrate that. I call it trauma or tension transfer. You go to work, you haven't worked on yourself. Let's say you're out of integrity and you're just angry, right? And your anger, you yell at your employee, and that employee goes home and yells at his wife, and his wife yells at the son when he comes home from school, and the son kicks the dog. Literally, the kicking of the dog was a transfer of your anger unhealed, right? It was that tension transfer. Now, let's just pretend like what we didn't know is that man, maybe he was abused when he was a child. And let's say that he made a lot of really bad decisions to try to cover up that pain. And one of those bad decisions was getting addicted to pornography. And let's say his addiction continued to the point where he's looking at illegal things with his pornography addiction. Let's say he's also addicted to alcohol, just trying to solve all of his inner wounds. And let's say his wife just left him because of that. Well, and let's say that this is the weekend where he gets his 12-year-old daughter and her little cousin. Now, an unhealed anger at work. Now I yell at him, and it didn't end up kicking a dog. It ended up harming a child, right? And so it's so important that all of us take a look. I love the story of the man who's on a couch, and he's sitting there, and his little boy comes in and says, Daddy, I want to play baseball. And his dad's like, oh, no, I'm busy. I'm reading the newspaper, And the little boy comes back a little while later. Daddy, it's a beautiful day. Can we go play baseball, please? And his dad turns the page of the newspaper, and there's this advertisement, but it's got this map of the world on it. And he has this idea. He tears out the map. He tears up a little piece of paper, throws it on the floor. He says to his boy, he says, you know what? You need to learn your geography. You go get some tape. You tape together every single piece of every country, every state where it's supposed to be. You do that world perfectly, and then I'll go play ball with you. He thinks it's going to take a couple hours, and like 5 minutes later, the little boy comes back and he says, Daddy, I got it. Perfect. And the dad looks at it. He says, what? How did you do it so fast? And the little boy turns over the paper, the map. He said, there was a picture of a man on the other side. I just put the man together, and the whole world came together. That's really the answer. It's how we show up, how we look in the mirror. I realized myself that 2 or 3 years into the undercover missions, I realized that the common thread with the traffickers wasn't earrings in their noses and tattoos. It was arrogance, greed, lust, and unhealed trauma of their past. And I had to look in the mirror and say, Paul, you're doing good. You're helping kids. But how is arrogance, greed, lust, and unhealed trauma, how is that affecting your life? And I got a phone call from 2 of my operators that said, Paul, you need to come to this healing retreat with us. And I'm like, I don't need to heal. I'm Paul Hutchinson. They said, no, you need to heal. You're in your second marriage, headed for a divorce. Your kids don't talk to you. You think that happiness is going to come from one more thing, one more car, one more girl. And they brought me into this healing retreat. And that was the first time that I experienced breathwork, the first time that I experienced meditation, the first time that I experienced the proper use of plant medicine when it came to trauma healing, and it completely transformed my life.
Paul, if ever you want to come and explore the art of living, I'm offering it on camera. Just come with your family. We have a beautiful center in Boone, North Carolina. It's pristine property up in the mountains, and the most authentic ways of meditation from the ancient times are taught there. And we're preserving that wisdom. We're reinvigorating interest, and thousands of people are coming and benefiting from it. And obviously, if there's ways that we can help you in your mission with liberating humanity, we would be happy to explore that.
I would be honored. I would love to come, and then I would love to collaborate and help push that message, because I believe that that's part of what needs to happen to help the children. Making the movie, now we've got global awareness. We have 70 million people saw The Sound of Freedom. Now they're all aware of it, but so many people are like, they're okay. Now I want to do something. I want to help, and they I want to go undercover and rescue kids. Well, the worst thing you can do is go to Mexico and try to rescue kids. You're going to get arrested. You're probably going to get shot. The best thing you can do is go home and hug your children. The best thing you can do is go home and do some breath work and meditation and work through your own issues so that they're not contributing. The best thing you can do is have a healthy relationship with your children where they can come to you and tell you when something is off, and you can help them work through some of their traumas. So I believe that what you are doing is helping to eradicate child trafficking. I really do.
And same here, like your work is definitely very inspiring in that regard. Tell us, what are some misconceptions that people have in the United States about trafficking? Like, how can parents, by healing themselves, they're healing their families. What signs, absence of signs in a way, can parents look out for?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so many times we think that trafficking is something where it's a third world country thing. It's in Thailand, it's in Colombia, it's in Mexico. No, there's the United States is the number one producer and consumer of child pornography in the world. And as such, it has the largest percentage of predators on children per capita. And so the United States is a dangerous place for kids. And it's important for parents to understand that if you walk out your front door, I don't care if you're in an apartment complex or an affluent neighborhood, you walk out your front door, you look left, you look right, there's a very high chance that one of those doors is a dangerous place for children. Let me prove it to you right now. 1 in every 4 women that you know was a victim of sexual abuse as a child. And most of them, it was a family member or a neighbor, and most of them hold on to that pain. Now, men, it's a little bit less. It's 1 in every 5 at some time in our life. But even them, the majority of them, it was as children, and 1/4 of them, it was under the age of 10 years old in their own homes. And so there's this huge problem where so many people are holding on to all of this pain. Yes, there are children that are taken, that are moved to other countries. The majority of those children come from broken homes, from runaways, broken foster care programs. These are all issues that we're working on that we need to fix. But for a somewhat healthy home, you need a relationship with your kids where they can very comfortably come to you and say, Dad, I don't like it when you tell me to hug Uncle Harry because he touches us weird and he says that we should trust him more than you. Or I don't like this babysitter. She's showing us pornography and says that we should keep secrets from you. Or I don't like going to this friend's house because her brother's showing us, or her brother took pictures of us when we're changing. And now he says he's going to show them around the school if we don't do other things. Or more common than anything, you need a relationship with your 12 to 14-year-old son, because this is what they're going after, who are playing online gaming platforms, who predators are involved with some of them, and convince them to take a conversation elsewhere, thinking that it's another 13-year-old girl. And so you need a relationship with your son where he can say, hey, you know what, Dad, I kind of screwed up. This girl sent me some pictures of her, and she told me to send pictures of me, and I did, and then a video, and then now she says she's going to send it all over the school unless I do send some money. I don't even think it's a 12-year-old girl. It's probably a 45-year-old dude, right? And it's called sextortion. It happens all the time. It's very, very common. There's been kids that have committed suicide over just somebody having this picture of them that now they're going to do something with it. So it's so important that we have healthy conversations with our kids, and online safety is priority. I tell a lot of people in our audiences that you're the most dangerous predator for your child isn't sitting in a black alley. The most dangerous thing for your child is in their backpack, and it's in their back pocket. It's their phone. It's their access to the digital world that they need to have some safety nets set up to prevent those predators from doing the things that they're doing.
Is there like a checklist or something that all parents should be having, like just to make sure that their relationship with their kids is safe enough that the kids trust their parents and are able to share,
Absolutely. And I go through a lot of that in the book, in the Sound of Freedom book. There's, the first section is the making of an undercover operator. But even there, it's me learning situational awareness, me learning the signs, me learning how to identify, potential challenges with kids, and if someone's being trafficked or whatever, all of those things. It also goes into, different types of training that you can do with your kids. And the best thing you can do is teach your kids some sort of self-defense skills. Because that confidence that they have will help them through any difficult situation. And then we go through a few of the different rescue missions in that are covered in the movie and some others. But the whole last section, the last 4 or 5 chapters, is all about what we were talking about in terms of healing, of breathwork and meditation and different types of tools that people can use to heal themselves and help their kids heal. The worst thing that can happen is your 12-year-old coming to you and saying, Uncle Harry did this to me, and you say, oh, well, we don't tell anybody, it'll hurt the reputation of the family. No, that will harm the child emotionally more than what Uncle Harry did to her. Right? It's so important that we believe them. If they're bringing something like that up, there's a very high chance it really did happen. Deal with it however you need to. Help her heal, help him heal, your son or daughter, because otherwise what happens is that pain gets buried and it comes out later in life. Like I said earlier, in anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, different types of trauma response type things that happen in most of us as adults.
And I feel like it's even more, I don't know the statistics on trafficking, but I think the distance between the child and the parents is even more in the East than the West. In the East, I see it's a little bit, the parenting style is tough love. And that has, I don't want to go into like what's right and what's wrong. There can be pros and cons to everything in this world. But I think somewhere that creates that distance between the kids and the parents. And the kids sometimes, it takes them a lifetime to open up to their own parents and even say something as small as "I love you" to your parents, right? Love is not easily expressed, and so is not fear, and so is not shame, or so is not guilt when you go through something like this, right? Like guilt or shame or, those kind of emotions, even harder to express and let alone love. And in the West, I feel like there's room for improvement, obviously, but at the same time, I think there's a lot more room for improvement on the Eastern hemisphere of this world.
For sure. I have so many friends that have come down to our healing retreats that are some of them from Vietnam that were there when they saw their fathers arrested by the invasion that was coming in, and others had to leave on boats, and most of them never heard the words "I love you" from their parents, and I actually never heard that myself. I grew up here in the U.S., but my father came from a very aristocratic type of family, and as such, never expressed that. And I think it's so important to help people feel love for themselves, feel love from their family, feel love from their creator. These are all super important tools in helping people heal from the things in their life that no longer serve them.
Where do you think are most modern day enablers hiding? Like, are the statistics aligning towards that, or are there any patterns? Are there any identifiers, or no?
Here's what we found is that children in second and third world countries are at more risk. The poorer the areas, the more people will do anything for money, and those kids are definitely at risk. We found that almost half of the children that we rescued in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, more than half the children were sold by their own families. And it's sad there. You can't just put them back into a place they're going to be sold again. You've got to find a healthy solution. So poverty is a contributing factor to the supply side. The demand side is a combination. The people who have arrogance and pride and greed, and yes, there absolutely is a strong. The Jeffrey Epstein Island was not something that he was just doing by himself. There's a lot of very, very powerful people who have climbed every mountain and done everything else, and sadly are looking for other, pushing the limits. However, in terms of the abuse in our own families throughout the United States, there's differentiation, whether you're in a religious family, a non-religious family, different nationalities, different races, none of those, different income levels. And so it's important for all families to pay attention. Again, the kids are at higher risk if they're part of a broken family, a runaway, or a domestic abuse type situations in their own families, or in the foster care program, by far higher at risk there. But aside from that, you're not going to have kids taken from a healthy family and kidnapped and moved as easily, because those families have the resources to look after them. But those families are not immune to what happens at sleepovers at their cousin's house or their grandpa's house or their uncle's house or their aunt's house. We've seen that all the time where family members are involved with the abuse of kids. So it's important that we're pay attention to all of those things and have that healthy relationship with your kids.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. A lot of our listeners are founders, meditators, leaders who have this strong ethic of giving back to the society. How can these leaders, especially the next generation leaders, what steps can they do? What can they give back? How can they use their network, their influence, their friendships to promote anti-trafficking outcomes?
I truly believe after 10 years of undercover work that the only real solution is in healing humanity, is in liberating humanity from the toxicity of our own unhealed child trauma, of our divisions between each other. We live in a world that is filled with religious dogma that is fear-based, that is division-based. There's so many us and you, and people launching missiles at each other over religious differences, or people. There's so much hate that is fear-based of different people. I think that the solution is number one, recognizing that we are all truly one, that all of us, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm a different color of skin or different income level, or even the fact that there's these people who are in deep pain. Now, yes, they still need to be put in a place where they're not going to hurt innocence, right? They need to be removed, but you can do so from a place of compassion rather than a place of hatred. And the real answer to fixing this entire problem is for each individual person to look at the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror, and say, what do I need to do to heal what I need to heal? It's not all just that guy's fault because, he's looking at pornography and I'm not. Well, guess what? All of us are contributing in some way, and all of us need to take a different view on people who are yelling at me in a grocery store line or whatever. In fact, here's something that some people are going to be mad at me, but I'm just going to go here. I've recognized that if I'm ever judging another human being, if I'm ever judging them for there's not a 99, 80%, is a 100% chance that I don't have all the facts. I don't know. Let's say, some guy cutting me off on the freeway, or somebody yelling at me in my grocery store. Somebody stole $1 million from me. Somebody sold me a child. There's a 100% chance I don't have all the facts. I don't know. I don't know if that guy cutting me off on the freeway, I don't know if his wife's in the hospital and he's late. He might just be an asshole. But even then, how did he become that asshole? Was he abused as a child? Did he have whatever it was? Now, he still needs to get pulled over. He still needs to get a ticket because he's putting my life in danger in how he's driving, right? That guy that stole a couple $1 million, he still needs to go to jail. He still needs to figure out so he's not taking advantage of other people. That guy selling me a child still needs to be put in a place where he can't hurt innocence. However, it's important to know that I can't judge him because I don't know what kind of pain brought him to that point. And once we see the world from that standpoint, we can then take the steps towards healing humanity so we don't have trafficked children anymore.
I 100% agree with you. And it's not just one solution fits all, right? It's our duty is to make sure that we are healed ourselves. The cop's duty is to make sure that that person is arrested. And that person's duty is to heal themselves so they don't commit that same crime again. So I think all of us have to do, all of it, right? It's like we all have to do our own duties and our own dharmas and our own actions towards solving this. But, thank you, Paul, for this wonderful conversation. But more importantly, I want to thank you for your work, for your energy, for your effort. And I'm sure the blessings of countless children are upon you, and just talking to you, I'm so inspired. Every once in a while, there's a conversation like this, which can stir you at the level of your heart, right? And I'm feeling that today. And I thank you for that. And it's because of your work and the energy that you brought here. Appreciate
I'm
it.
incredibly grateful for you having me on your show. It's important to understand that back at the time of Abraham Lincoln, it wasn't guys like me that solved the slavery problem. It was actually people like you. It was Harriet Beecher Stowe. She wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was the podcast of the age, right? They created awareness with good people everywhere of what was going on in the South. And in fact, years later, when Abraham Lincoln met her, he shook her hand. He said, "So you're the lady that wrote the book that started the big war." And so today, it's you that I'm incredibly grateful for, you having built a platform with listeners. And I thank every listener that is still with us right now for taking the time. I know this has been a dark conversation, but it's hopefully giving you the tools that you need to help keep your children safe and heal humanity.
Thank you. Hey, a quick pause. I want to share a resource I've personally trusted for years. And when it comes to living well, not just in moments of meditation or reflection, but in everyday life, what we put into our bodies matters deeply. And that is why I love Shri Shri Tattva. It's a brand rooted in authentic Ayurveda, from daily wellness supplements to natural personal care, all crafted with ancient wisdom and modern purity. No shortcuts, no hypes, just products that support real well-being from the inside out. For me, it's all about alignment between what I practice and what I teach and how I live. And Shri Shri Tattva helps me bring some of that care into my daily routine. You can explore their offerings at shrishritattvausa.com. I highly recommend checking them out. The link is also in my description below. I want to share something I've been personally loving. Shankara's Ghee Sutra is one of those rare products where ancient wisdom meets modern skincare. It's crafted from ghee that's churned 10,000 times. Yes, 10,000. Blended with Ayurvedic botanicals like hibiscus, bamboo, and it penetrates deep, up to 7 layers, to nourish, hydrate, and bring your skin back to life. No harsh chemicals, no surface level fixes, just deep, authentic care from the inside out, like everything we talk about on this show. You can check it out at shankara.com